papers. Tukianza matangazo yetu tunaanza on a simple note with our papers and our papers and events of the day. The events of the day will be what is shown on the papers. That is the unfortunate event of kuanguka kwa building which has costed lives. Happened early yesterday, and most of us saw it. Ours is to comment and to review what else can be done differently so that those things are put under control. Simbanes Radio welcomes you to our discussion. Simbanes Radio gives you a chance to talk back to us on 0728091656. If you are to call, please call that number. If you are to send a WhatsApp message, send the same number, 0728091656. Anybody wishing to give us comments below on our YouTube page. Our YouTube page is Simbanest Media. So the very moment you feel like giving feedback, tuangalie hiyo na sisi pia tutafurahia na kuona your review. Simbanest Media, and on Simbanest Media we are welcoming you. We are also giving you chance to respond to what we are saying and to what we are broadcasting by giving a feedback. We always respect feedback of our viewers, feedback of our listeners, and believe you me, we exist because of you. We do things because of you. We cannot act. We cannot be working in a vacuum. So your views are very important to us, and a big welcome to hear from what is coming from your end. On today's papers, tumeona the standard starts with the merchants of death. The merchants of death, we are talking about building construction regulatory processes. Though they are putting the governor on the spot there, saying he may be responsible. But at the same time, they are reciting the fact of a system of defiance to rule of law. Somebody reminded me just like a joke that when we took a decision, and it's a long decision, I don't know how many people will support us on this. It's a long decision. It talks about our decision on 2012 to 2013. Under normal circumstances, the world had condemned the two people and said, we have cited these two people for post-election violence of 2007, 2008. And Kenyan said, despite you condemning the two people, we are going to elect them. And I remember a statement came clearly from America, choices have consequences. Everybody is expecting America to react to this. We are not going to react to this. Everybody is going to say, are we to judge? Are we to condemn? We are not going to condemn anything. But we are going to tell you that choices have consequences. The choice that Kenyans made of working with people who are still under ICC, working with people who are under international condemnation, that thing has cost us a big time. Yes, majority of us, I know, may not agree with this because they took it as a passing thing. But traditionally, respect to the rule of law, once you break it once, restoring it again becomes a challenge. And that is what we are facing right now. You are pointing fingers at the governor, but the governor will call his officers to his office. And the chief officer will be called. I know. Patrick Analo will be called in his office. And when he called in the office and he says, I gave out notices, and the notices were not listened to, will you listen to the chief officer? Will you take his opinion and his concern as valid? No, we'll try to pretend that we are condemning him. But we are really not condemning him. We are condemning ourselves. We are living on a government which has got several court orders that they have acted in defiance of, and things are just okay. And therefore, majority of people and majority of institutions have come to a belief that might is right. If you are stronger than the other party, then it's okay. I believe Adolf Hitler had a word for it. I just can't remember the exact words, but it was a question that history will always work with the person who won the war. If you never mind about history, because history will work about it. That people were asking about the Nazis were telling me, hey, history will really condemn the Nazi regime as the war was going on from 1938 to probably 1945 or thereabouts. Until I told them, no, don't worry about history, because if we won this war, then history will remodel itself. And probably I've seen it in our history records about things like Mau Mau, things like whatever. Who is always the villain? It's always the loser. The winner gets it all, and the loser walks away condemned. So we may be putting pressure on the governor, but he has behind him several notices that he has already issued to the developer. And that developer, to start with, has condemnation from not only the county government, but also NCA. The National Construction Authority, that is NCA, that one is not a business of Governor Sakaja. Yet these people, the core business of NCA is to check the documentation and credentials of the players in a construction site. So they probably will walk in and ask are the fundis wearing proper gear, if the engineer is the engineer fully qualified. It's obvious. One of the issues that have been cited is that the site engineer had his license expired and had not renewed it, and he had got correspondence, or rather notice, from NCA that he should not be practicing. But which country? After that, then what? If a government can have a court order stopping the government from doing something, and it goes ahead and does it, that means any other person, as long as you have money and resources, you'll go along and continue doing things in defiance as long as you have the resources. Because, say, for example, NCA does not have the resources to force it. Or even if you had the resources, those resources, how frequently are they used? Where is Ojuang to start with? Where is he? Let's face the truth. The resources may not matter. It's the nasty Hitler's approach that don't worry about history, because history will always favor the person who won the war. I can't remember the exact words, but that is, in summary, the end of it. And so as we go forward, ladies and gentlemen, we need to ask ourselves, is it an external matter, like we are saying we are looking for somebody to blame? We blame Sakaja, we blame who? No. As you are blaming Sakaja, what is crossing this idea of tall buildings everywhere in Nairobi town? It used never to be a problem. But the moment we started a story of affordable housing, where the government becomes a player, where the referee becomes one of the players, my friend, let's all go back to the drawing board, because it is setting up an example. When a government becomes one of the players, government is number 6 and is also the referee, it is obvious conflict of interest. This issue of building houses should have been outsourced to a third party, should have been probably showcased to international developers who would have developed interest, so that the government still retains that its dignity of being the judge. But here we have a scenario where the government is a major player, doing 14 floors, doing 13 floors, doing whatever. So it gives encouragement. Areas where the people were never thinking of building story buildings, places like Kilimani, places like, I'll just say Kilimani, for example, Lavington. Once developers, or rather commercial developers, notice that government is so busy building affordable housing of 14 floors or 15 floors, they say, then why not? I can also do mine here. And that has the domino effect. It keeps the next one, leads to the next one, leads to the next one, leads to the next one. We don't know where to turn to. We don't know where to whatever. And it's because we don't want to look at the root cause. Even our papers, even our newspapers are now not pointing a finger at the government. They fear. So they are pointing a finger as the governor, as whatever, as a isolated case. The governor may not be on fault because they had already issued notices. But there is this overriding factor of our culture is reset from 2013, where we put 2 people wanted by International Criminal Court, so, isn't it, ICC, and we allowed them to be candidates in our whatever. When we allowed that, and we hear now story of a person who is impeached becoming party leader of probably one of the parties, whatever. Where are our red lines? Where are our red lines so that we can say you can't cross this red line? If you are ready to approach that, it's one story. If you are not ready to approach, let us sit together and agree that though the law will be practiced, though the law will be implemented, though the law will be applied, but it will be applied selectively for people without resources. But for people with the resources, then we'll give them a leeway to this extent. And probably that resources then probably can we go ahead and quantify that? When we did that, we do that very casually. We did that very casually until probably around 2017, 2018, when we got the shock of our lives. The person sitting on the opposition said, okay, fine, now that we can see that things are not moving when we are sitting out there, we are going to do a handshake with the other side of the fence. And you can imagine the frustration. So you could see people seething with terror. Because to them, they had planned a 10-year session with another 10-year session, which was supposed to be smooth and enjoyable. And the fact that it was not smooth, simply because it left the main road long time ago. The main road is simple. Just go back to the rule of law. Just make sure that we clean up from the top. Somebody who had gotten condemnation from ICC and could not clear it except by disappearance of the enemies, we could have simply said at that time, 2013, 2012, that this person is so serious or whatever. Not even a single person. There were 2 of them. And our elections, our political system is such that right now, as I can see, the 2 of them are still struggling. Out there struggling, and right now the people who are the kingmakers lining up who should do what, who should do that. Kenya is a big challenge. As we talk of merchants of death, as we are now putting the governor in a lot of sleepless moments saying, it is Sakaja, it is Sakaja, it is Sakaja. The whole country left the main road in 2013. The very moment we allowed 2 people who had been facing prosecution by the ICC to be sworn in at the head of the republic, we crossed the red line, we crossed Rubicon. The rest of it is just war. Once, I can't remember the name, but it should be the Caesar. Once Caesar crossed the Rubicon, then it was an obvious sign that he is going back to fight. I say that he's going back to fight, or he's going back to be killed. Killed without a fight, or fight. But these taboo standards of crossing the Rubicon, but at the same time saying, yes, things will happen smoothly, things will happen peacefully. Probably this is one area which is hurting us. It's hurting us because we are not prepared for the results. Very interesting. We do things, but somebody has advised us before that when you do this and that, when you mix this chemical and that chemical, you get that result. Now we mix this chemical and that chemical, and we don't like the result which comes on, so We probably pour a little water, get some soil, pour there, hoping that with luck, it could be that that soil has the neutralizing agent to reduce the effect of the drug. But what of it if it does not have? Because by the way, by the time we are picking that soil, we are just now gambling. We don't know the quality, we don't know whatever. So ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are in a very awkward position. Our take is that issue of construction is because, number one, the referee is one of the players. And the referee being one of the players, I remember there are several cases where residences have gone to courts saying the government is not obeying A, B, C, and D. And in majority of cases, the courts quash down such cases simply because they say, hey, we get our salary from this house. What else do we expect? But in isolated cases where the court gives clear direction of what should happen, they are listened to. Sometimes they are not listened to. Because the government is a player. It has already staked its interest. It has already put its money and resources in the process. So it's like any other investor. Against that background, you expect now other players to come in the whatever and the government to do 100% regulation. The NCA may issue notice. And this person against whom the notice is issued is also checking around and saying, hey, pale kwa Pumwani pia unajenga nyumba yako imefika gorofa ngapi, pale fulani pia at the end of the day, that situation itself should not have arisen. So we wish them the best. Let the investigations continue. I can see the CS is fully committed to that, and let's see what comes out of that. So we go to the next paper, which is The Nation. And The Nation is just talking of two major issues. One is the senior school chaos. A scenario where a boy or a girl has been selected to a particular school, and because of proximity, because of distances, there's things which are probably not in sync with that person's ability and so on, resources and so on, so that you'll find people missing opportunities, very good opportunities, simply because the selection process was very long and so on. That is something that we are hoping the CS Ogamba will work on, and we'll get results. The other interesting one is the inheriting Raila's shoes, the Odinga relatives to watch. And I would say also the process to watch, because the process, I'm also concerned about, we believed, and we still try to believe, that ODM was Orange Democratic Movement. It was not Odinga Democratic Movement. So, but thinking more widely, then this should include all Kenyans who are members of ODM, who are participants of ODM. But unfortunately, and probably that's why the papers are thinking so, I can see 6 people lined up, starting with Winnie, going to Rosemary, going to Raila Jr., and so on and so on. And vis-a-vis the sons of Dr. Oburu, I can see this also a full lineup. You don't want to mention everybody's name because it's on the papers, the first page of Saturday Nation. You can look at the names. But it's as if now the lineup on one family, the Raila Odinga's house versus Dr. Oburu's house on the leadership of ODM is what is being asked. And you know, now you ask yourself, where is Sifuna? Where is Joho? Where is all those guys who have fought hard for ODM to be where it is. Pareno or somebody. I remember there's the Maasai gentleman, I cannot forget, Senator. Yes. All those other names are now being swept under whatever, as if they are supposed to wait patiently until the top post is taken. Then they can probably now rush for the third post and the fourth post and the fifth posts. Well, that is a part of the game. We'll look at it as it unfolds. It's nothing urgent, nothing immediate. That's the thing. It's a great party, and if it's balanced well, it had the capacity of going beyond a generation. It had the chance of probably being one of the parties in Kenya and in Africa, which sustains itself beyond the founding members. But as it is now, it's being diluted, because especially when you think of it, that on the succession, inheriting Raila's shoes, I don't see anybody beyond Bondo, leave alone Nyanza, beyond Bondo. All of them will be coming from a homestead, not even a family. That's something that probably may require attention, may require further discussion. And we are always open to hear your views, ladies and gentlemen. The way to give us feedback is 0728091656 on WhatsApp. You could also give us feedback on Facebook. Simanes Radio is our handle. On YouTube, Simanes Media is our handle. Give us comments there. We will support you. We are having beautiful reception. The day is nice. The afternoon is beautiful. And it depends on what you handle as a priority. Whatever views you give us, we'll also incorporate into our thinking. But our worry is that the other people may be getting worried, because ODM should be a movement for all Kenya. So when you see that when the top skion is out of the picture, then even the most popular newspaper, the Daily Nation, admits that it's the Odinga's relatives to watch. It's just the whole structure. It's just that the top brass has to be in the family, and then other people to give service or protection, or to like soldiers protecting the king. That would be a difficult scenario, though probably we'll have to live with that. Moving on to the other newspaper, the East African is trying to understand why so much ado about Somaliland. There is a lot of interest on Somaliland. Somaliland, if you know, is the breakaway, whatever, from the Somali Republic. And previously, people would ignore them. But right now, giving them international recognition, of which Israel has given them, among other respectable states or countries, is a point of concern. At the bottom, we are seeing there Uganda elections, and you would find Bobby Wine sweating it out. Bobby Wine sweating it out. The crowd is responsive, and so on and so on, and is vibrant. His biggest challenge is that the government in power is not making any arrangements to allow democratic space for the opposition to practice. Technically, Museveni has presumed that he's already won the elections, and is already, therefore, thinking that for sake of stability, people should not waste time on overdose during the whatever. Yesterday's paper was, I think, talking about that. Him saying he would not wish to see chaos, because to him, he has already won. And any divergent opinion should be treated with triviality, quickly and very briefly, and so that people go back to the main topic, which is he is the president. Fairly unfortunate. Again, that one time will tell. So many things have happened to offset such things, to offset and to overturn such things. I remember one of our respected guys the other day admitted, former President Uhuru Kenyatta admitted that Jirongo made him president. And when I started analyzing, I asked myself, how did Jirongo make him president? Except now, at the center of his conversation, he says in 1992, Moi was slated to go, and to go home. And everybody knew it. The repeal of Section 2A in 1990, around 1 year's time for preparation for the opposition now to form itself. Section 2A, in case somebody forgets, that is the Kenya is a one-party state. Now that section was repealed in 1990. Giving momentum to 1991, now political parties were being formed. And we probably naively thought that it's going to be one political party versus KANU. And one political party, the man who had been struggling all through was Oginga Odinga. So you'd imagine that it would be Oginga Odinga versus KANU. All these guys to rally behind Oginga Odinga. Just like you see 10 years later, you see everybody rallying behind Mwai Kibaki. Unfortunately, because some tribes in Kenya always assume if there is a negotiated settlement for you to choose leaders, then that leader has to come from them. Probably due to numbers, probably due to potential, probably due to economic power, they have assumed that is automatic. So when much as people were saying, yes, Odinga has been watching that, Oginga Odinga has been watching that state from the year 1969 when he formed KPU and Kenyatta scuttled it. And when Moi came now into power, he formalized what Kenyatta had scuttled, because Kenyatta scuttled multi-party without telling people he scuttled it. He just banned KPU, and any divergent thought of forming a party was dealt with in advance brutally, without a law guiding the process of containing it. So when Moi came to power, later towards in the middle of his early stages, I think it should have been 1988, 89 or whatever, he worked to put now a clause ensuring that Kenya is a one-party state. That was the Section 2A. Kenya is a one-party state. But sooner or later, the events of the world, the falling of the Iron Curtain, and so on. And people woke up and say, hey, now you put it as a document on our laws that Kenya is a one-party state. So one first thing that we want to do is let us vote, let us repeal this part. So that sort of one-party state is removed. This is what happened at that time. And everybody presumed that an intelligent society should have simply reverted to the status quo to say in 1969 somebody had already formed the KPU. What you do is support this KPU to remove this person from power and then reorganize ourselves. Whoever now is in charge can whatever. Yes, but a team now just said from themselves, no, this man Oginga Odinga will not get this thing. This man Oginga Odinga can never get this thing. Let us scuttle this by doing everything. And I remember all of a sudden even Mwai Kibaki comes with his proposal, and his proposal is not to support Oginga Odinga but to move on the far end, calling himself DP. Kenyans, we come from far. Our biggest challenge is that we never learn from those lessons. So every moment when we want to go to town, instead of boarding the vehicle, we have to go to the workshop and reinvent the wheel and work on it and balance it and make it round. Then we put it on a vehicle, and by the time you get to town, it's 3 days late. If that is our approach, Even that Singapore story. Singapore story requires a set of things. You have to have a set of things to go right. And among them is that willingness to say, to be pragmatic. To say, if you want to cross a bridge and there is no bridge, then you need a small boat. But you can't say that I want to cross this bridge, need to cross it when they go to the other end. But because the person who owns the small motorboat, which would have helped me to cross, is not a friend of mine, I will try to do it anyhow by swimming or by whatever. Swimming, all right, but most likely you will be swept by floods. That is where we are leading ourselves to. That is where we are going to. That is what we need to address. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Simbanese Radio, Sauti ya Mwananchi, 0728091656. That is our number. Tunaendelea discuss our papers stage by stage. Now we are moving to Uganda. Uganda has given us position. Now we are probably looking at the Daily Monitor in Uganda, how they are talking about how inflations, polls are joined at the hip. Because they are saying there is polls ahead of them. There is also high inflation in Uganda, and how those things are correlated to give an outcome in Uganda. What they are not forgetting is that they are only talking of the finances. Inflation only talks of finances. But to run a country, you need three things. To run a country, you need three things. They are only talking of one. Finances is one of them. Number two is the people. Number three is the gun. In African countries, you cannot run a country if you don't have the gun. If the gun departs from you, hard luck. It will be used against you. So you need three things. You need the people, you need the money, and you need the gun. So what they are talking about, probably we'll look at it more closely. We have the center of our news. It's called one man called Marco Rubio. And today's discussion centers on that. Probably if you look at our ticker at the bottom there, you will see the ticker talking a lot about Marco Rubio, because the ticker is just talking about what has happened in Venezuela. Things change with time, but some people don't change with time. Americans still that issue of being the world policeman in the name of protecting their own interests. Sometimes amazes me. It relies on military superiority, and therefore cannot be fairly balanced. What do I mean by fairly balanced? You cannot balance in say, for example, dealing with a case in Russia versus Ukraine, because the aggressor, Russia, is equal to or more powerful than United States of America. So you find President Trump going around in every direction, running around with every excuse, without standing his ground and saying the real problem that he's dealing with is not all those long stories. The real problem is just to admit that the US cannot dictate terms to the Soviet Union the way it could to, say, a small country like Venezuela. Venezuela has been a challenge, all right. It has been suspected of doing drugs and so on. But that notwithstanding, the idea of just moving into a sovereign state and removing the head of state and saying he's going to stand trial for crimes. The last time it was done was on Manuel Noriega. And Manuel Noriega was sorted out. As to whether the drugs were eliminated totally is also another mystery. Probably we don't have a straight record of that. Obviously, if it was sorted 100%, why would it still be there? Again, we have this case of Maduro, President Maduro. They are saying him together with his wife has been captured and flown out of the country. It's a strange way. Again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Simbanes Radio. And as we go along, we also listen to your views. We also listen to your remarks. I've got some late remarks, but it was on the previous topic, so we are not going to go back on that. We welcome your views. Does the United States of America have the right to simply arrest sitting head of state without consulting organizations like United Nations and so on? We would expect that to be done under the aegis of a bigger organization. You would expect that to be done on a certain framework that says beyond this, a leader has crossed the threshold. So the world policeman, I don't know even what that means. Because that would mean, say for example, if we had NATO is doing it, a combination of several countries, then would say because it requires a majority vote, because it requires many people to take a stand on that, the outcome of that decision will be well balanced. But now you have a single individual making a decision and saying this is the way to go. You're not sure whether he's made it because of personal issues. Because I remember while he's doing that on Ukraine and Russia, and it's obvious because the situation of whether Russia tells you this, these people are playing with our turf or whatever. The truth of the matter is that you sent your army to invade Ukraine, Crimea. And you took Crimea and you stationed your forces in Crimea and held a sham referendum in a sovereign country without adequate observance, that there were no observers and so on, and you were the participant and the referee, what you are citing in another case. The fact that all those happened means only one thing, that therefore there is almost no chance of the other party getting fair justice. Yeah, because it cannot get fair justice if you are the player and you are also the person who now dictates the final position. So we have that in front of us, and that is why at the bottom our ticker is running on that simple message. Washington has not made such a an direct intervention in Latin America since the invasion of Panama in 1989 to depose military leader Manuel Noriega. And when Manuel Noriega was being deposed as a military leader, you could understand, because a military leader, you see, is such that you don't see the end of a military junta rule. It's not clear. It's not provided for in a constitution. So when somebody says, again, you do that on any other person, you start wondering whether are they exceeding their mandate as a country. It's very tricky. Does it mean that Nicolas Maduro does not have in his country, there was no process of how to remove him? Was he in power in perpetuity the way Noriega was? You had to remove him, because if you don't remove him, he could stay in power in perpetuity. What we are facing here in Uganda. A similar scenario is happening in Russia, just next to them. They are immediate neighbors to the to the west. Remember, the world is round. So the immediate neighbor to the west is the Soviet Union, or Russia for that matter. And in Russia, Putin just always arranges for elections, knowing who is the outcome and who is going to continue ruling, and he does those sham elections and he continues running the country. And America can do nothing about it because Russians have the nukes. Thanks to their earlier cooperation or earlier support for Russia to retain nukes. Remember, it's the US which sat down under Bill Clinton, which sat down after the lifting of the Iron Curtain and said, please, Ukraine, for sake of good order, hand over your nuclear weapons to Russia to be stored with some security guarantees. That's why probably Zelensky is not very keen on those security guarantees, because they are kind of guarantees which a country gives to you, and once after 4 years that person is out of it. Like right now, Bill Clinton, is even marshalling, walking around the country, marshalling whatever support and saying, hey, look, this 3/4 of the scenario where we are having Russia facing Ukraine is that Russia knows Ukraine is not a nuclear power. Because in 1994, together with the United States, they persuaded Ukraine, hand over all your nukes to Russia. What they were concerned about is proliferation of nuclear weapons. But they did not care that once these nuclear weapons fall into the wrong hands, and this is, in this case, is now Russia, that Russia will using it as a bargaining chip to dominate all those satellite countries. Talk of Ukraine, talk of Georgia, talk of which country? Everybody who broke away from the USSR, the Soviet Union. It's a tough order. It's a tough order. And that is what we are facing right now. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Simba Nest Radio, Sauti ya Mwananchi, 0728091656. That is our WhatsApp number. Ukiwa na maswali, ukiwa na maoni, ukiwa na maneno, tupilia hapo, tuko na wewe, tutakujibu. Our handles, Simba Nest Media, on YouTube, Simba Nest Radio on Facebook, Simba Nest Radio 2, or rather Simba Nest _radio when you are talking on Instagram. You are welcome for your views. You are welcome to give your opinion. We are together in this, and a big welcome. As we come to the conclusion of the programs, we realize that today you are talking about issue, first of all, the building construction issue in Nairobi. It's not an isolated issue. We said it starts with defiance of common rule. So can we go back and say, once we go back to the rule of law, when somebody is served a notice and told to stop, then you stop. But if we live in an environment whenever somebody is given a notice to stop, you simply look for the people who are controlling that, the people who are doing the oversight, and you say, now that I've refused to stop, who will oversight me? And then you now selectively bribe them and defy all others. If we left that culture, then the country will be well. But if we ignore that culture and keep on along that culture, then the results we are having right now is just a tip of the iceberg. One time it will get us through. Anybody who wants to resolve Kenyan's problems must first of all admit that our problem started in 2013. I repeat for the umpteenth time. Our problem started in 2013 when the ICC, when the Western nations initially said there are two people who have been interdicted and they are supposed to appear in front of the ICC jury. And we said, no, we are deciding our own things. And therefore, despite somebody being a criminal, or listed as a criminal, we will say we are going to elect those criminals. We had a choice. We lost out on that. We're going to pay for that continuously. So help us, God. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is Simba Nest Radio, Sauti ya Mwananchi. In case of comment,